Ladies and gentlemen, the story below is a vivid reminder that in today's world, information can become a weapon even more lethal than bombs. In a television program hosted by Vladimir Solovyov, one of Russia's top propagandists, just a few seconds of seemingly harmless footage became the spark that led to disaster. Small details such as a restroom sign, decorative columns, and distinctive interior designs enabled Ukrainian intelligence to pinpoint the location of the Rubicon base, hailed as the hub of Russia's elite kamikaze drone unit. But in reality, this base wasn't hidden in any secret bunker. It was right inside the Patriot Exhibition Center near Moscow, a place regularly open to citizens and tourists. Once the information was exposed, Ukrainian kamikaze drones immediately launched a strike, turning the display of strength into a humiliating defeat. Instead of bolstering public confidence, Solovyov inadvertently revealed what the Russian Ministry of Defense desperately wanted to hide. One of Russia's glorified cyber warrior units was exposed right in front of the cameras. This is clear proof that carelessness in propaganda can become a deadly trap. Meanwhile, on the battlefield in Donetsk, Russia's situation also descended into chaos. At Poprovsk, Russian offensives became increasingly fragmented, poorly coordinated, and no longer supported by heavy mechanized forces. To the west, near Udakny, raids devolved into disorganized incursions, while to the east, near Minarat, Russian troops had to abandon vehicles and retreat under Ukraine's intense firepower. Seizing the moment, Kyiv's forces launched a fierce counterattack, recapturing the town of Udashne and raising the national flag in its center. This image became a symbol of the shifting tide, as Russia's effort to encircle Poprovsk ended in failure. According to Ukraine's general staff, there were as many as 173 clashes in a single day, with Russia largely on the defensive. Footage from Herodipka showed Russian soldiers retreating under the pressure of Ukrainian Marines. This reality reflects a sharp decline in Russian organization and morale, while confirming Ukraine's ability to shift the dynamics of the battlefield. Beyond the front lines, Europe is also rushing to prepare for a new threat. The incident of Russian drones breaching Polish airspace forced NATO to admit a major gap in its defenses. Traditional radar struggles to detect low-flying, inexpensive drones, while intercepting them with missiles or fighter jets is prohibitively expensive. To address this, the EU announced plans to build a drone wall along its eastern flank, with Ukraine directly involved. A €6 billion package from the European Commission is only the first step in a €150 billion defense fund, aiming to create a collective shield rather than leaving each nation to face the threat alone. With its battlefield experience, Ukraine will serve as the technological inspiration for Europe to industrialize and expand such defenses. Across the Atlantic, President Donald Trump's administration sent shockwaves by threatening to cut over $67 million in funding for specialized schools in New York, Chicago, and Fairfax. The reason? Policies on gender identity and race that the Department of Education claimed violated civil rights law. This is not merely a financial dispute. It is a move underscoring the Trump administration's philosophy of discipline, gender neutrality, and anti-preference in education. At the same time, the U.S. Congress increased pressure on billionaire Neville Royingham, accused of having close ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Lawmakers urged the Treasury Department to conduct a full investigation and even called for his assets to be frozen. If the accusations are true, this would be a direct blow to Beijing's covert influence strategy inside the United States. Meanwhile, in China, the image of a woman weeping before the statue of Siddhagarbha Bodhisattva at Mount Jiuhua spread widely. Her cry of "Give me back my son" not only moved onlookers, but also exposed the despair of many citizens facing loss and injustice. In a society where religion is restricted, faith becomes the only refuge for people seeking justice and hope. In Laos, the Mohan Botan Special Economic Zone, once praised as a shining jewel of the Belt and Road Initiative, has now stalled. Numerous Chinese-funded medical facilities were forced to shut down for violating local laws, leaving investors with heavy losses. The promised golden incentives turned out to be illusions, turning the dream of cooperation into a burden and exposing the lack of transparency in Beijing-backed projects. In the Middle East, Iran executed Mr. Sabazi, a political prisoner accused of spying for Israel. International human rights organizations condemned the trial as unjust, based on confessions extracted under torture. His family revealed that he had once been offered a commuted sentence of 3 years if he signed a confession, but he firmly refused. In the end, he was still executed, sparking outrage across the international community. From Moscow, Donetsk, Brussels, Washington, Beijing, to Tehran, it is clear that in today's world, not only weapons but also information, technology, and transparency decide outcomes. A single slip in propaganda can doom an entire military base. A cheap drone can force NATO to build an entire defensive wall. An education policy can shift national debate, and an unjust trial can ignite global outrage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the world we live in today, a world where the truth will inevitably be exposed. Those who disregard transparency and justice will eventually pay the price, whether they are a military power or an authoritarian regime. Ladies and gentlemen, after following all these developments, from Vladimir Solovyov's accidental leak to the disarray in Donetsk, to the strong reactions of Europe, the US, China, and Iran, I would like to share some personal reflections to reveal the deeper picture of today's world. What struck me most is how Russian propaganda backfired. In modern warfare, every image, every word, even a restroom sign can become lethal evidence. Solovyov's mistake was not just personal carelessness, but proof of the system's inability to control information. To me, this is the fatal weakness of any government that relies too heavily on one-sided propaganda. One small crack can bring down the entire wall of lies. Looking at Poprovsk, we clearly see the difference between having many weapons and knowing how to use them. Russia may have a powerful mechanized force, but without coordination and morale, all of it becomes nothing more than abandoned scrap metal. Ukraine, despite its limited arsenal, has been able to shift the tide thanks to its determination and ability to seize opportunities. In my view, this is a reminder that in war, strategy and spirit matter more than numbers on paper. Europe's decision to build a drone wall is not just about defense, but a declaration that warfare has entered a new era. Small, cheap, but deadly drones have forced NATO to rethink its entire approach. I was particularly impressed by the EU's willingness to admit its weakness and learn from Ukraine's battlefield experience instead of concealing it. This adaptive spirit is what prevents them from being caught off guard. To me, this is a clear example that real strength lies not only in money or numbers, but in the ability to change in time. In the United States, the Trump administration's decision to cut funding over concerns of discrimination and gender bias reflects its philosophy of returning to discipline and neutrality. This is not just a debate about education, it is a statement that America seeks to reassert social order in the way it believes is correct. Meanwhile, China presents a paradox. On one hand, projecting global influence through billionaires and economic projects. On the other, a country where citizens kneel in despair before statues, begging for justice they cannot find. To me, this paradox shows how fragile public trust has become. When faith in law is so weak, religion becomes the last refuge. The story of Mr. Sabazi, a political prisoner executed in Iran, truly weighs on me. When a government turns its courts into a stage for repression, one man's death is not only a personal tragedy, but also a blow to international credibility. To me, this proves that while power can silence an individual, it cannot extinguish the underlying desire for freedom that persists in society. After all, I draw one conclusion. Truth always finds its way to the surface. Russia could not hide the Rubicon base. Europe could not cover up its defense gap. America could not conceal its internal social struggles. China could not hide its people's despair. And Iran could not mask the injustice of its courts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the essence of our era. No curtain is thick enough to conceal forever. Those who choose to hide, embellish, or suppress will eventually be stripped bare by the truth. And when that moment comes, the consequences are often harsher than any military strike. If you find these perspectives valuable, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stay with us for sharp and truthful coverage of a world that changes every single day. Every single